Welcome to Clause 8, the #1 podcast on intellectual property, trusted by top in-house counsel, judges, and policymakers worldwide. Hosted by Eli Mazour, we bring you in-depth conversations with the personality shaping IP. Brought to you by Tradespace, where ideas take flight.
Today, we're lucky to be joined by my good friend, Peter-Anthony Pappas, who has agreed to spend a part of his birthday with us. So, Peter-Anthony, thank you for joining Clause 8.
Yeah, super happy to be here. We've been trying to make this happen for how long now?
Yeah. So I appreciate it. We've tried to make it happen in different parts of your journey. So I'm glad we're doing it now so we can talk about all that. Me and you are actually both from the same part of New Jersey, which I learned actually the new director, John Squire, is also from that area.
That's right.
But that's not how we met. And we'll get to how you and I met a little bit later. But let's talk, I guess, maybe start out talking about kind of what you're kind of focused on these days. You're the senior advisor to Senator Tillis on IP issues. You've been with him, I guess, quite a bit of time now. You talk to everybody. You talk to everybody on the administration, on the Hill, all the different stakeholders. What are you hearing about IP, patent systems? What's on people's minds these days?
Well, that's not an easy question, but there's a lot of answers there. Let's see. I guess at a super high level, I'd say, the senator, and thank you very much for thinking of the senator and for including me. I think from a high level perspective, the senator's super focused on all things IP. That's super important, right? A lot of people, our background is patents, so we immediately go to patents, right? The hard IP, but the soft IP is super important too. So like the copyright, trademarks, trade secret aspect of IP law. So you can sort of, I guess, bifurcate in two buckets. On the patent side, you have PERA and PREVAIL, which you're very familiar with. There's also things looking at patent quality and efficiency gains in the IP system, but this Congress, really those two bills and those two topics are at the forefront of the senator's agenda. Probably the two most important issues in the patent world or the IP world, in my opinion, is patent eligibility jurisprudence reform and PTAB reform. And then in the other bucket, as I mentioned, the bifurcated bucket, you have, copyright, AI, right? Ingestion, fair use, all that going on. The center is also looking at some things. Online commercial piracy has always been a very important thing to him and isn't a very important issue in general globally. And
you just had a hearing about that, right?
We did with performance rights, yes. And that's compensating the actual performers, as opposed to the songwriters. And there's sort of a discrepancy there between terrestrial broadcast and digital. And so there's that, and also some DMCA. Expeditious removal we're looking at on the Hill. So there's a lot going on. Then in this Congress, it's been even more important to sort of zero in on the big issue. So I'd say online commercial piracy, expeditious removal, PTAB reform, and patent eligibility jurisprudence reform. If I would pick, I guess, four big things.
Yeah, so I'm sure most people who are listening to this know, but Senator Tillis is the chair of a subcommittee on IP. That recent hearing you had, I think Gene Simmons was there.
That's right.
What is it like planning a hearing with Gene Simmons?
Oh, okay. Well, So Senator Tillis is the chairman of the IP subcommittee of the Senate Judiciary Committee, as you know. It's a process. It's fun and nerve wracking. I'm not gonna lie. I guess I'll share this. When I first came to the Hill, everything was nerve wracking in a good way. I think it's good to be nervous, right? It keeps you honest. It keeps you focused. Because everything's new and you want to do everything right, then you settle in and you understand how things work, and it becomes like anything. Like riding a bike, you just jump on the bike and go, where before, you're worried about even starting the ride. Planning subcommittee hearings it's a process. It's there's a lot going on, and it's in addition to everything else you're doing, right? So like the clock doesn't stop, everything else doesn't get paused. It's like, okay, all of a sudden now, what's the topic? Is it going to be a consensus hearing or not? Who are the witnesses going to be? How many witnesses? How many panels? What's the interest in this? And then the agenda for it. And so, there's a lot of aspects to it. And typically they all come together relatively quickly. And when you're dealing with other people, right, it becomes exponentially harder, because it's one thing to control your own agenda or your own calendar, or, if the decision's solely in your court, so be it. But when you're dealing with other folks, you got to deal with their schedules and getting testimonies and bios and things like that. So it's and then there's also the sort of creative aspect to it too, of what's the like I said, what's the interest going to be in this, and how do you keep it interested? Because that's a very part about IP law, especially patent law, is getting folks educated and interested in something that's extremely weedy, one of the most probably niche areas of law, I guess I would say. And so, yeah, if you can make it more approachable or entertaining and informational, it's a win. But how do you have to do that? You have to plan that, and then you have to get agreement to have it. So yeah, it was a lot of coordinating, and credit to a lot of great folks that were able to help coordinate. Having the Kennedy Center Honors in town, it was very. There was some planning. So there was some thought behind that, and so yeah, it was great. I think that hearing probably got some of the most continued press subsequent to the hearing of any hearing we've had. So
something else, I guess, will PERA and PREVAIL. You mentioned obviously PERA to fix Section 101, PREVAIL to fix stuff in PTAB, and maybe we'll go back in time. But in the beginning of this Congress, one thing that I think you also helped plan is that outdoor press conference about the two bills, which you don't see really. You see a lot of panel. Can you kind of tell us the story about?
Yeah, I mean, again, and everything's a team effort. That's one thing I've learned. No one does anything on their own. I mean, credit to everyone involved in that, and especially the Tillis Comm shop and everything else. I mean, again, that was something very new to me. Actually, is a live press conference. Actually, I don't think since I had come on board from detail to when I officially went over, we had done something like that. So yeah, another another nerve-wracking in a good way.
Yeah.
Learning lesson. How do you do this? And so yeah, it was just getting a lot of the right folks together in a room and figuring out what we need to do. And again, Senator Tillis he's Senator Tillis. You can put him in front of a microphone. He knows his stuff, and he carries the crowd in the day. And so he really made that event. It was also Senator Coons and everyone else that was involved there, but. No, it's a lot of planning and a lot of folks that do the work behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, that's the great thing about working for Senator Tillis. I know that when he gets behind an issue, he can get up there and talk about it. And you get the key is it's genuine. That's the biggest thing. People, no matter what they say, is I really like the senator. I can tell he really cares about that. That comes through, and that's super important. Yeah. So when you're doing a press conference or anything else, how you speak, how you carry yourself, people can read into that. And so I think that was the success of it. It's sure, the logistics of figuring out where to do it, what time to do it, what press to get there, sure, all that great stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the folks in front of the camera that have to carry it.
So you mentioned Senator Coons, who's obviously been a very big partner to Senator Tillis on IP issues. This Congress, I guess Senator Adam Schiff has taken over role the ranking member. Can you, I guess, give us your sense what kind of impact it has had or might have on those big bills which you discussed, PERA and PREVAIL? Senator Coons was a partner in those, but obviously Senator Tillis is still the chair.
I mean, he still very much is a partner. I mean, since I came to the Hill, and that's one of the beautiful things about IP is it tends to be apolitical. You have an amazing partnership between Senator Tillis and Senator Coons. I mean, the one thing I constantly would hear subsequent to a hearing, IP subcommittee hearing, is, wow, those guys really get along well. They seem to really have a lot of fun. And okay, I've heard they get along, but now I see, and that's pretty huge. A lot of people maybe come to our judiciary hearings, for a contentious show, and you leave an IP subcommittee and go, wow, they get along really well. They really like each other. And it's, they do. And whether it's a private meeting, talking about planning out the IP subcommittee or bills, they work really well together. And the staff too. I mean, credit to his staff too. I mean, again, it's a team, right? It's amazing folks on his team too. So that partnership very much continues. I mean, he's leading the charge on the Democratic side for PERA. PREVAIL is Senator Coons' bill, and my boss is the lead R on that. So he's not the ranking member this Congress, Senator Coons, but he's very much leading the charge on those bills. Senator Schiff is a great partner. I work very closely with his staff. We've covered both hard IP and soft IP to some extent this Congress. We had a hearing on PERA. And so, I mean, I think I would let his staff speak to his agenda, but I would think it's a little bit maybe more focused on the copyright side based on his background and history. But, the hope is to engage in the hard IP, especially in the patent side of things, because, PERA and PREVAIL are super important, as I mentioned, but the two biggest issues in the patent landscape. And so, yeah.
So obviously, Senator Tillis, Senator Coons, and you have been working a long time on PERA and PREVAIL. At the end of last Congress, we saw them actually on the full committee hearing agenda. PREVAIL passed by a vote, at least the committee. PERA didn't quite get there. Like I mentioned, this Congress starts. There's a big press conference. I'm like,
Yeah.
what does Peter-Anthony know? We might be over the hump with those. And I guess, where do you think those stand? And I kind of...
Yeah. I was listening, like I mentioned, to your previous podcast.
Yeah.
And just in general, I sort of, this past week, was sort of reflecting on a lot of stuff. And it's something I've said before is, you miss all the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
And I know it may sound cheesy, but it's true, right? And so it's easy to sort of say, something's probably not going to happen, or, oh, it's hard to do, or it's unlikely. Sure. But the point is unless you're willing to put in it, put in that effort, it's definitely not going to happen.
Yeah.
No one's going to wake up in the morning and decide to pick up patent eligibility jurisprudence reform or PTAB reform as an optional thing to tackle. There has to be a drive to do it, and all the better when it's a genuine drive. And so, you have to approach it that way. Otherwise, if you give it anything but your all, you have zero chance of it moving forward. And so, the Senators believes in these bills for sure, right? This is, and so therefore he's going to champion them and push them forward. So the goal has always been to move the ball forward. And a lot of folks will say, "Oh, look, look, this is not going to pass." I always hear it's not going to pass, or nothing's going to happen with these. And
which is a safe bet in Washington, I get.
What's that?
It's a safe bet in Washington. Something
well said. No,
yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's something I was thinking about listening to something, another one here. And, no, extremely well said. And so to my point of that is right. It's a safe bet. But look what's happening. First of all, look at IP legislation in general. AIA didn't move quickly, right? No patent reform really moves quickly. But look what has happened, right? Look how many hearings. Look. That the fact that you just mentioned PREVAIL went to markup, and regardless of how close it was, it made it out of markup. That's a big step.
Yeah.
Now, folks that are not keen on it moving forward will be quick to dismiss it, because why elevate any step that was against their interests? But that's a huge step. And it did, I can tell you for a fact, people opposed to it took note of it and surely got nervous, because they're like, well, we never thought it would get that far.
Yeah.
But of course, once it gets that far, then they go, oh, well, it'll never get on the floor. Oh, it'll never pass. It's always right. It's always,
right.
And that's a theme I'll probably touch on later, because it's even if we get to talk about legislation, same thing where you want to invite people to the table, as the senator say, beyond the, at the table versus on the table, as the senator says. A lot of folks will say, oh, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, no, you have to iterate. You have to take these steps. And so anyway, getting to markup was huge, right? Because what did it signify? It signified that it was on the radar of staff and members to a greater extent than if it didn't go to markup, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get the attention on a bill like you will when you notice something for markup, and the staff have to then rec yay or nay for their boss, right?
Yeah.
So that was huge. PERA, in PREVAIL, we tried to move in parallel. We did have to pull, the senator did make the decision to pull PERA, because, it's also extremely more weedy than PTAB reform, right? Senate Judiciary folks can sort of equate, okay, we get district court to PTAB, even though not the same, standing requirements. They can sort of, okay, I get what's going on in this bill. Patent eligibility jurisprudence reform, yeah, no, that's a bigger mountain.
Yeah. It's complicated for patent attorneys. So.
Yeah, well, that gets the way we've talked. You and I've talked about. It's difficult for everybody.
Yeah.
Patent attorneys prosecuting, drafting patent applications, examiners examining them, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to the litigation part of it. But no, it's extremely complicated. I can't tell you how many times when I was an examiner during a lot of the 101 changes from the Supreme Court, and lots of times attorneys would say, and this is during prosecution, which is, the egg versus the chicken, right? You don't even have a patent yet. You're in the prosecution stage. And they'd say, I boxed myself in a corner. I'm bound by the specification. And they would try to look for things they could amend a claim to overcome a 101. And sometimes they couldn't find anything because the spec was drafted in such a way that there wasn't sort of an out that they could rely on, right, to amend the claim, to have support in the spec. So yeah, it's super complicated. Yeah.
So what do you see are like the path forward for, let's start with PREVAIL.
honestly, you have to just push forward if you believe in something and be optimistic, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the path forward is iterating, getting people to understand what these bills do and why it's so important to have these changes codified into law, right?
Yeah.
To keep that, to establish stability and certainty, right? Predictability. Otherwise, you don't. I mean, again, we can talk about this later, but when I was working with Andre, and we did the PEG, the Patent Eligibility Guidance.
Andre Yankova,
Andre,
former director.
Former director under the first Trump administration. I was super proud of that. It was amazing.
And you were, just for background, you were at the USPTO as a senior advisor.
Yeah, I was a career, but I was pulled up by Andre and Brendan McComas, who was chief of staff, as special advisor to Andre, and he wanted someone, again, I think similar to how I came to Senator Tillis, someone that had that actual firsthand knowledge of, like, how did it work when you examined under 101, right? And then I was a supervisor of the PTO. So how did it work when you were looking at, dozens of examiners work under 101? And then I had lots of roles at PTO. So that ability to sort of see the actual impact of it. But all that to say, amazing changes that really did help dial things in the PTO, but the courts aren't bound by it. They don't follow it. And so you really need the two branches to work together to affect meaningful change that's long lasting. And it gives those folks the idea that when there's a new administration or even a new head at an agency, that something's not going to be rolled back or changed so drastically. So
yeah. And I think that's just something that I guess all sides can agree on, that stability is better than changes. Obviously, I'm sure over the last whatever number of years before this administration, you've been trying to convince people to come together, for example, on PREVAIL, and I'm sure, it's been very difficult. But now this administration comes in and they start making changes at the PTAB to reduce the number of institutions with post-grant proceedings. And are you hearing from any of those people who you've tried to convince, saying, hey, maybe maybe we're more open to some legislative solution?
Great question. The fact that you're asking it, that you thought, let's just say that, I think some people have had that thought of like, maybe, I think it's more the concern is where things go, even if they go further, there's always that thought process of, well, maybe this wouldn't have been so bad, or maybe again, getting back to the senator says, it's best to be at the table than on the table. I'm stealing his words or borrowing his words, because there's a lot of truth to that. The door has always been open since I've been there, and my predecessor, and Brad was amazing, and I learned a lot from him. So credit to him. Same way is, you have to be open to hearing all sides. If for no other reason, too, it also helps your side because you learn what the opposition wants, right? And you can strengthen your position. But the point being is, the center always is open to what can we do to move this forward. Everyone takes a haircut, right? It doesn't always have to be one-sided. The problem is you have to have folks that want to come to the table to do that. Because
obviously the USPTO, they...
Oh, that's right, the codify,
Yeah, they proposed the rules for... they have an NPRM.
Yeah, that's right. Which goes farther than PREVAIL,
NPR rules. I saw that Senator Tillis, along with Senator Coons and two members of the House, have signed a letter in support of those rules. But part of that letter was, hey, PREVAIL. PREVAIL is there, still on the table.
Of course we're going to plug. Right. But it gets to the point you raised and I was talking about of stability, certainty, right? Is like, and as I talked about the PEG, Director Squires is doing amazing things at the PTO, and same thing with Secretary Lutnick. But that's subject to change, right? I mean, a new president,
as we've seen on both the PTAB side and the 101 side.
Yeah, right. I mean, going away or back definitive and things like that. So the idea of codifying into law is super important. So I think that's what you're seeing in that letter. I mean, I'll tell you that's what you're seeing in the letter, is this point of saying, these reforms are great, needed reforms. But there's even a further step we can take, is to have both, right? You can have executive branch change, but have the legislative branch legislate to codify. And again, you can iterate. So you can have PREVAIL theoretically codified into law, passed into law, and still there's flexibility to go farther. But you move the ball forward in a meaningful way and lock in some change so that if things do change or get dialed back, it doesn't go back as far, let's say, right? Yeah. You mitigate that change, I guess, or you minimize the delta, which is still certainty and predictability, right? Because a large delta is more nerve-wracking than a smaller delta, right? Yeah.
So, about PREVAIL, I don't consider myself an expert on the subject, but the people who I talk to who are opposed to PREVAIL or not helping it along, I say, on the podcast and off the podcast, I asked them, well, shouldn't you back there? Like, no, PREVAIL was just as bad as for our side as the new proposed rules. It's interesting, obviously, the vote that took place last time out of the committee, it passed by one vote, but some of the people who voted against it actually wanted to go further one way. Some people who voted against it wanted to go the other way. So, like, how do you move this forward? How do you kind of put it all together?
Yeah, I mean, in PREVAIL, there's a lot, right? And so a lot of folks, what I found, weren't necessarily against the idea of PTAB reform. It was sort of a shopping list of, okay, kind of like these changes, we're questioning other changes, maybe didn't like certain other changes. So that was more of the thing we were dealing with PREVAIL, is how do you dial that in when everyone likes different things on the shopping list, right? So you can't make everyone happy all the time. So that was that. To your point, though, about folks saying, and I've heard this narrative before, okay, yeah, well, no, it doesn't matter. We still don't like PREVAIL, even though the USPTO has gone farther. Just to be blunt and honest, it gets back to being at the table and being genuine about your sort of position. There's some folks that, I sort of bifurcate into there's the policy, good policy. If you get the person in the room that's against the bills, I find if you say only wear your policy hat, if you're just talking about patent policy, do you think there needs to be a change? And even a lot of folks, and I'm not going to mention names, would say, yeah, okay, maybe so. If I'm just thinking that way. And then the other part of that bucket is the business decision, the business side of things. I mean, they're representing a company, and if the company uses 101 to knock a patent out and they find the system very advantageous to do that, or the PTAB is very advantageous to their business needs, they're going to go with what their business needs are, right? So, there's a certain, I don't know, art, narrative, PR aspect to it where, they're not going to concede, because it's dangerous for them to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, maybe we should have been at the table more for PREVAIL, for instance. Because suppose then, it puts that, it's sort of, then they're admitting to something that later they'd have to then defend if things go a different direction, right? Or maybe the PTO changes don't happen. And then they're on the hook having said, oh, well, maybe PREVAIL wasn't. You know what I'm saying? So unfortunately, that's what's driving a lot of it, is just this doubling down, regardless of what's right, regardless of what's best. And that's the unfortunate thing, because from our perspective, we're inviting changes. We will change bills, right? It's no bill's going to be perfect and meet all the needs of just one side. But some sides just don't want to come to the table. They'll say, oh, we're not invited. And I'll tell you, that's not true. I mean, the senator, that's one thing I love. Many things I love about him is he means what he says. He doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. And so when he says you can be at the table, it's an open invitation. So
I don't know, are there any specific areas, let's start with PREVAIL, that you think hey, this is an area that maybe we'll be working on this Congress of changing maybe the language or something to kind of,
that was towards the end of last Congress, mostly in the last Congress, there's a lot of talk, especially when we were going to Markup, of that shopping list or that laundry list of what people liked and didn't like, and trying to figure that out and what could be done. This Congress, more of a focus, because you remember PREVAIL's Senator Cruz, my boss, is the lead R, but we've been very focused on PERA a little bit more than PREVAIL, in terms of that charge. So the narrative hasn't come up so much. Also, it went to Markup and got out of Markup. So the hope is the same will happen this Congress. So the big focus now is what do we do with PERA and how do we move that forward? And there's been a lot of good progress. I mean, there's you've probably heard there's talk of a full judiciary hearing. We're trying to work on that for PERA. So the hope is to get PERA to full judiciary hearing and really have people have to dig into this issue even farther, staff and members of Congress, and then for PREVAIL, get that back to Markup and add a markup. So I think when that happens, that's when you're going to see more focus from those offices on that laundry list of things that they like or don't like, and standing requirement, whatever it may be. We like this provision of PREVAIL, but not that provision, right? And sort of trying to figure out, where you can compromise, because it's all about compromise. It's all about compromise.
Yes, so it seems like nothing specific in mind yet, but I guess for PERA, for example, when you're going to have the full Judiciary Committee hearing, that's when you're kind of you're open to ideas and you're open to.
Open now. I mean, I literally, if anyone wants to talk about, the door is literally always open to talk about PERA and PREVAIL, especially PERA. That's near and dear to my heart. But like, it's always. I mean, there were changes made to PERA this Congress, right? When it was reintroduced, and it wasn't to make Section 4 of the bill, right? Pre-post solution activity, insignificant pre-post solution activity. That was just added to sort of double down on what was put in the findings section, because we would hear in the past, or I heard in the past, oh well, it's just in the findings. It's just in the findings, as if to mean that it carried no weight, which it does. And it wasn't required to do it, but we did it to show that, look, we mean what we say, right? The boss means what he says. Just throwing something on a computer or saying it comes from a hard drive or it's rendered on a display doesn't pull something that's otherwise ineligible into the realm of eligibility for like a process method claim. Yeah. So, I think, if there's folks that come with meaningful change. Now, if someone comes and the amendment is to gut the bill, right? Okay, obviously not. But the door's always open to that, because no one should get everything they want. That's the whole point of compromise. So I will say the other side, those who are not thrilled with the bill, just to be honest, haven't been as open.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because obviously the major complaint about PERA was like, you can patent human genes. Then it was like stuff like that. You can just patent anything if you throw it on a computer. You're fixing all those things, and then what is your thinking? Are they going to find something new to nitpick, or are they?
Well, no. And you know what? I don't even know if you realize what you said when you said patent. But it's eligibility, right?
Yeah.
Not patentability.
Oh, yeah.
No, but it's a great point, because that's what the opposition, unfortunately, will come to the Hill and say. This allows you to patent everything. Patent everything. And to someone that doesn't have a background in patent law, that can be scary. Oh, wait a minute. Well, this is going to allow patents on things, property right. Well, no, it's not. It's eligibility, right? You still have 102, 103, and 112. 101 was traditionally always intended to be a coarse filter, not a fine filter, which has become a fine filter. But that's what happens. They conflate these things. They confuse folks by saying, the opposition say, oh, it's patentability. And it's not. It's eligibility. It's just, PERA widens the aperture on eligibility. That's it. You still, again, novelty, non-obvious, enablement. You have all these other issues, or these other gatekeepers, if you will, to sort of for checks and balances. So that's the problem we deal with, is folks coming on to confuse folks of this is going to be patentable, everything's going to be patentable, and it freaks people out. And then you also have this data transmissions and football plays and just pulling it from a heart, and then we will try to address that. But again, not for that. Again, I did think the findings section, I thought the bill was very clear.
So you mentioned the most recent changes to PERA. I guess what has the response been to them from those who, I guess, had issues with those being in the findings versus not?
Yeah, well, one response has been we have, Senator Blackburn and Senator Horner joined as co-sponsors. So that was huge. Yeah. And that was great to show that support in that way. Again, we sort of talked about this earlier. What I have found, at least, is the folks that are really opposed to this, because again, it's gonna upset the certainty that they feel is good, right? The ability to quickly knock stuff out under 101 because of the ambiguity that's present, right? It provides a great vehicle for knocking out a patent. Yeah. They don't want to see that happen. They don't want that to change, even though some will admit, well, it could be fine post-PERA. We just don't know, but we know what we know now, so we don't want to change it.
Actually, it's funny. Almost everybody I talk on the other side, they kind of say, who are against PERA publicly, Yeah, they know it's a mess, but we prefer the mess over.
Right. It's kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
Kind of scary. No, but that's great. No, I appreciate you saying it, because doesn't it get to what I said earlier about, like, you bifurcate into the two buckets of, well, if you have an honest conversation about patent policy,
Yeah.
put on your patent prosecutor, patent litigator hat. What do you think about this? You're not tied to a company.
Yeah.
Versus, right, you're tied to a company with a business need. Right? Yeah, they're going to say, "Oh yeah, you're right." If I get them in that first bucket, this are the people I've known for decades. They're like, "Yeah, this is a mess."
Yeah.
Like, this is, it is a mess. And so that's a problem. And so yeah, the folks that just don't want to see this happen, unfortunately, what I have found is they will not concede anything, regardless of. And again, those changes weren't made necessarily to try to get them on board, because again, I think the bill really did adequately say that, in the findings section really did convey the intent, but it couldn't hurt to double down and really show. And I thought it was a smart move, because it showed, look, consistency, right? As opposed to just change a bill and say, oh no, now there's a delta, and why was that made? And oh, was it because it was weak before? It was more say, no, look, if you look back, it just furthers the narrative that was there the previous Congress. It doesn't change it, right?
Yeah.
They said they meant this, and look, they doubled down on the thing they said to even further limit themselves to it by putting it in the upper body of the text, right? In that in the final section. So, if anything, I think it helped further clarify the position, but two, it sent, I thought, a message to say, look, no, the senator and those that support this bill and say that, insignificant peer persecution activity won't, just pull something that's otherwise ineligible in the realm of eligibility. They mean what they, put the money where the mouth is, and that's why it was put in the operative body.
Yeah, so it seems like right now you're focused on, it seems there's some momentum in terms of more co-sponsors of senators and educating them and kind of,
Yeah, more, I mean, again, folks who are not keen on seeing things move forward are going to say, it's not going to happen. It's just going through the motions, right?
Yeah.
But what is happening, which is great to see, although it's a slow process, I'm going to tell you, it's IP reform, especially patent reform, is a very, like I said, weedy area of law, and you don't usually have folks waking up in the morning or rushing to the Judiciary Committee saying, I want to, take up patent issues. I mean, we love this stuff, but anyway, getting folks educated and knowledgeable about this is a huge step, right? Especially when someone has to make a decision on to rec or rec for or against something. And so what I have found, which is makes me happy when I wake up in the mornings about this whole thing and why I'm still doing what I'm doing, is folks are getting more educated on it. And, slowly but surely, those points of clarity are coming out. Like, for instance, when you said, I used to hear, PERA is going to make everything patentable. And I'd have to explain. And now, here and there, I'm getting staffers who are like, oh yeah, it's kind of interesting. This group came in and started talking about how it's patentable. And I said to them, well, wait a minute. Aren't there other checks and balances? 102, 103. I was like, this is great. Like, now that narrative's not, that doesn't carry the day like it did before. And I'm getting folks on both sides of the aisle saying, yeah, I'm noticing how they come in and say, you know what I mean? So things can work for a while, but if it's not a genuine argument or people are trying to conflate things, once people can pull the curtain back on it, then they're gonna have to find something else. So I do enjoy seeing, and I mean this genuinely, I do enjoy staff coming and saying, oh yeah, no, I did see this, or that's interesting. Like, wouldn't this help them? Wouldn't this help their constituents? Like, why are they against this? And these are folks that don't have them. And so when you get folks, staffers, being able to connect the dots like that, that's great for the pro-reform, pro-patent side.
Yeah.
But it's a slow and steady process.
Educating, and on my previous episodes, I guess a few guests mentioned because of Senator Tillis's likability and the impact that might have with things along. And they, same with you, I guess, the fact that other offices are listening and interested in this and making the room in their minds for some of these, I guess, nuances that might make a difference. I think it's a sign of progress.
Well, sort of also helps too, because when the opposition to the bill comes in and says these things, maybe, and I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it's sort of, in a way, it's good too, because those staff then will come to me and say, well, wait a minute, this is what they said, and what does this mean? And so it gives me an opportunity, because they, most people do not have a background in this. And so they'll want to know, and again, another reason why I love working with the center is, what you see is what you get. Genuine people have that. And if you're passionate about it and genuine about the thing you're doing, you're going to build a level, hopefully, of trust in folks that they'll come to you, even folks that may not agree with you. They know you're going to give them the honest answer. And so that, these folks coming saying, oh, this is originally people would believe it. Oh, it's patentable. But what they didn't know is they'd come to me and say, well, we just had a meeting with this group, and is this true? And I'm like, okay, let's go through the basics of patent law. Let me explain exactly. And then you see when the light, it's great when that light flickers on. They go, wait a minute. Oh, it's 101's just one of four things. And wait a minute, 101's not more heavily weighted than 102, 103, and 112. And people are told this and they believe it, but what's great is when they question it, and then that aha moment of, wait a minute, that what I was told is not really accurate. Yeah, that's good. That's good, because again, you want to get folks educated on the issue, because if they're going to disagree from a good, you can agree to disagree, but if it's coming from a good place or a place based on education and understanding of it, so be it, but not misinformation. Yeah.
So I think you hinted a little bit on your story about kind of you and then Hill, but I want to go through it. I guess, can you tell, actually off camera, we're talking about how your mom was a politician in New Jersey. So maybe you could tell your story about how you, a little bit about your background in New Jersey and how you ended up at the patent office.
Yeah, we may need another podcast for that, although it wouldn't be that interesting. No, it is a weird path. No, I say that because I'm super blessed and lucky and thanks to so many people. But okay, so grew up in New Jersey. And decided I wanted to do computer engineering. And so for undergrad, went to Georgia Tech and did that, and semiconductor design, embedded systems, so hardware and software. I loved it. I wanted I guess at the time, I'd say my dream or my goal was to work for Intel doing semiconductor design. That's what I was set on. And at the time when I went to undergrad, not to date myself, but it was engineering. I mean, you're in there. It's only it's engineering. There was no other path or deviation from just pure engineering, especially if you're electrical engineer or computer engineer. And I'll be honest with you, I got Georgia Tech, great school, but a lot of math and science, and I kind of was like,
a very tough engineering school.
Maybe tougher than it needed to be, but I wanted an easy. I was kind of like, I saw through my degree and got it, but I was like, I want a break, but not a break from school, but a break. So I found, and it's true, I found this pass-fail speaker series course in the College of Electrical and Computer Engineering. ECE was what was it? I think it's changed now. There was a speaker series. I think it was once a week, 1 hour, pass-fail. You just sat there, and speakers came in. And this is true. So I was hardcore engineering, dead set on semi. I loved that field, that area of computer engineering. And the speaker was an electrical engineer from Georgia Tech, went to law school for patent law. Never heard about patent law before, IP law, for nothing. And again, light bulb. As soon as I heard him speak, and I don't know why. It just everything clicked in that one moment. This is what I want to do. Like, that's it. And so immediately, again, I still did all my engineering stuff, but I would constantly try to interject IP. I probably drove my professors nuts because they could give zero care to intellectual property. And at the time, I think there was some DMCA work. So I was like trying to interject IP into everything I did. At the time it was stuff with Rambus. I'm sure people were just scratching their head like, what's wrong with this guy? Because I just was fascinated. I was like, this is what I want to do. So anyway, long story short, the goal was to then. And
DMCA was that bill about spam email, right?
No, I think
Digital Millennium.
Yeah, Copyright Act. It was a big. And again, and that's copyright, right?
Yeah.
So like they're even more confused. Like what's he like? You know what? Like it was. I'm sure a lot of people were scratching it. I was going to go to law school full time after I graduated. And then I really thought I would do patent prosecution. So immediately I worked for a law firm for the summer in New Jersey, just solidified the fact that I love patent law and IP law, but specifically patents. And the partner of the firm there gave me some great advice. Although, it's so funny because these decisions fundamentally changed everything I did. He goes, don't go to law school right away. Go do something that's atypical, right? Go get some experience. I was like, well, everyone goes to law. He's like, everyone's going to a law firm. He's like, somehow we came to the patent office. This idea, all roads lead to Rome. All these, if you're doing patent prosecution, everything goes to the patent office. So, that makes sense. Why not? So I got a job at the patent office. That's a story for another time, because that was a process. There was a shutdown, a freeze or something.
Okay.
And I didn't, I wanted to get in, but then they weren't hiring. And there's a great guy there that I owe credit to. If it wasn't for someone that got involved there, I wouldn't have had the option. There's so many stories I could tell you. And credit, seriously, I mean, like, credit where credit's due. These folks that gave opportunities to do things, because you don't do anything on your own, as I said earlier. Got to the patent office, was a patent examiner in 2600, 3D graphics animation. And, I loved it. It was great. And again, had amazing opportunities there to get involved. And remember, the goal is still to go to law school, either then leave the patent office or go at night to night school. But, again, I got pulled into all sorts of things I probably shouldn't have as an examiner, junior examiner. Got credit where credit's due to folks that saw something or said, hey, I'm going to give this guy a shot. And it just kept me really interested. So I went from that, did that, became a junior examiner, primary patent examiner, then eventually went to management, because I hit a sort of a wall where, like, if I really wanted to sort of influence the direction of patent policy or the PTO, I realized I had to be in management, right?
Yeah.
And so did that. You want the whole spiel? I mean,
that's great. Yeah.
And so then it was a SPE, supervisory patent examiner, and then
so supervisory patent examiners, you have like 13 examiners report to you.
About that. Yeah.
And how was that? I guess just that.
That was great, because again, that's one of the things that eventually, unbeknownst to me, led me to opportunities I have now, because you get to, one thing is being an examiner, you're doing it, right? It's one thing to hear about it or think you know how something works, but when you're actually an examiner, you're doing the examination and you're talking to other examiners, so you really know how that subset of the patent world works, because you're in it. There's nothing better than being in it. Not everyone can do everything. And then so that was great, because I did it long enough that I knew all sort of the ins, outs, the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you will. Yeah. And then went to management and supervised, and then did that for a while. So I got to see all the good, bad, and the ugly of that, and get to know from a different perspective, a different perch, how that works, and seeing it from a larger set of examiners and just the work I did, right? I would review the work of dozens.
I'm just curious, because obviously it's up in the air of a conversation about the roles of examiners and supervisors. What perspectives did you have as a supervisor that maybe you didn't learn until you became an examiner? Anything kind of stick out to you?
I mean, the biggest thing with being a SPE or supervisory patent examiner is you're managing people.
Yeah.
And that's something different, because a patent examiner is a very individual job, right? Especially when you're a primary patent examiner, you're full signatory authority. You can grant a patent on your own or reject a patent. Or issue, you can deem something allowable, and you have that stamp, although we don't use the physical stamp anymore. So as a SPE or a supervisory patent examiner, now you're responsible for managing people. So you have, the people person, the personnel part of it that weighs in. So that's always a challenging thing for a lot of folks, and that's just one of those things where you have how to manage people, and you have quotas and requirements and expectations and reviews, and so it's a whole other skill set you have. It's one of those things where, again, if you don't do it, you build up that skill set by doing it. And so I did that for a while, and that was great to see. Again, how does that work? How's that the first entry level manager?
And this is I guess we could do a big reveal, because that's actually how we first met. Because
that's right.
I had a patent application, I had some issues there, and I called up a supervisor, Peter-Anthony Pappas, and he helped me navigate those issues on behalf of my client. And then next thing I see, you're onto bigger, better things, different things.
But those those things, because again, as a SPE too, you have that opportunity to sort of get involved and sort of direct and give advice. Because again, as an examiner, you're working pretty much for yourself to some extent. It's good to have input from other folks, right? And sometimes looking at a case, I was always, as an examiner even, I was very pro pick up the phone, hold an interview. Like, first action allowance, if I could do it via an examiner's amendment, I was for. I mean, there's no, how do we dispose of this the right way and the quickest way?
Yeah.
Win-win, right? Different people have different experiences. So as a SPE, you can hopefully impart what you've learned, best practice, to other folks. And one of that is, picking up the phone. And if there's a lot of times the written word is not always the best, right? Things can get confused or conflated or just flat out misunderstood. And a simple 15-minute, 20-minute telephone call can resolve that. So as a SPE, you can help facilitate that, encourage that, say, hey, let me get involved and do that. So So yeah, I did that for a while, and that was amazing because again, I got to learn exactly how that layer works. Then got pulled over to the PTAB for a while. That was amazing, seeing how that world works, right? And again, bringing sort of expertise from the examining core over to the PTAB to help them out. And then, it's a crazy story. I won't get into all the details, but credit to Brendan McComas. He was a patent examiner who was eventually chief of staff under the first Trump admin. Him and Andre brought me up, gave me an opportunity. They created a position in the front office, to be special advisor to Andre and help run the agency with him. Got to work on the PEG and lead a lot of the AI initiatives. I mean, amazing opportunities. Again, credit where credit's due, these folks. And then that was amazing because now, I was an examiner. I understood how that worked. I was a SPE, so I got that. Over in the PTAB, so, I was in the other business units, so I got to see how that worked and how between business units it works or doesn't work. And then got to be at the top of the agency with the leadership there, the politicals. I was a career in the front office, I should clarify. But being able to bring that expertise of how's the sausage actually made in this agency of 14,000 people, right? And I think that's the skill that's what they wanted. But I got to do amazing things that later on would prove very beneficial, which is work on the PEG with Andre. I mean, it was amazing what he was able to accomplish when he was there as undersecretary. And so, unbeknownst to me, again, all those previous opportunities were what led me to that opportunity. And then Senate Judiciary, Senator Tillis came a-calling. I don't know exactly the full story, but, get called over to the patent office and say, hey, we'd love to borrow Peter-Anthony Pappas. And I was asked if I wanted to do it. There's sort of a process there I won't get into.
And did you work with their office before that?
No. No. And so I did not have any Hill interaction that I can recall. I didn't. No, not really. I mean, I worked on the PEG, worked on AI for the agency, operational things, but no, nothing really specific legislatively. And so, again, but I had come to find out, and credit again to Brad Watson, Senator Tillis, Ted Lehman, Sheil Patel. These are great folks that saw something. I think they saw value in the fact that, again, if you've been in all these layers, if you've actually done the work in there, you have a perspective that no one else has. And they wanted that. They told me, they said, we want to know how an examiner thinks. We want to know what happens during prosecution. Then what happens in the upper layers of management. How does this stuff work at the patent office, right? And so, yeah, it's been a crazy ride, not one that I would have predicted by any stretch of the imagination, especially considering where I started and what I was going to do to what I have done. I wouldn't change anything. It's been amazing.
It's a great story. And you've been with Senator Tillis how many years now?
Let's see, about over 3, I think. I mean, it, again, started on detail. I was on loan from the executive branch to the judiciary branch. And then earlier this year resigned from the executive branch and came over full time.
So you obviously have seen it from all different sides. One thing that I guess I'm thinking about is that Coke Morgan Stewart, who was the acting director, now she's the deputy director. She was obviously at the USPTO for a while as well. Mm-hmm. But before this election, she wrote an article about what this administration's approach might be to patent policy or how it might be different. And one thing she mentioned is the new administration will be more supportive of the types of things that you're doing on Capitol Hill in terms of strengthening the patent system. I guess, can you give us a sense of maybe that interplay? Because obviously they're trying to do a lot of stuff at the patent office, but how can they help support what you're doing and move things forward?
Yeah, it's extremely important to have collaboration between the executive and the legislative branches, right? So it's super important to codify changes into law. Again, as you said very early on, for that stability, predictability, right? It's super important. And so that needs to happen. I mean, Director Squires is doing amazing things. Coke did amazing things when she was acting, more so than any other, or performing the duties of whatever maybe we're acting. There's typically a lot of people have remarked how typically the person sitting in that temporary spot, right, is not doing much. She did a lot, and that's with the blessing of commerce, I'm sure. And it's great to have a secretary of commerce that is a patent holder. And it's very pro-patent. I mean, these are super important. This is a great time. This is a super great time. I'd say this is the best time right now because you have, Commerce Department that's pro-patent. You have Director Squires who's pro-PTAB reform, pro-eligibility reform, right? I mean, you saw the two first patents that were ceremoniously signed, right? Yeah. Send clear signals, right, regarding eligibility. So it's super important that the two work together. I can't highlight that enough. I mean, it needs to happen. And it's great to see that, like, we're in alignment. As you said, PTAB reform and 101 reform. The question is, how do you meld those together to have executive branch change and legislative change?
Yeah. So maybe I'll broaden it out, but, there's obviously people who have a lot of opinions about what you're doing, but there's a lot of people also who are very supportive of what you're doing. And I'm sure, I haven't talked directly, but I'm guessing Director Squires is probably aligned with kind of your legislative efforts. But what can those who support what you're doing, how can they kind of help push it forward?
Yeah, I mean, it gets back to what I was saying about education and messaging, sort of demystifying or clarifying some of the false narratives that are out there. That's the biggest thing is getting in front of staff and really explaining why this needs to happen, right? This isn't just some sort of exercise for fun. As you said, even folks who are against 101 reform, if pressed, will tell you it's kind of a mess. I mean, how often do you have judges say, help us? There needs to be legislative change in a certain area of law because it's a mess.
Yeah. So we're kind of discussing what people who support what you're trying to do with the legislation can do to help, and specifically the administration and maybe the PAN office. And it seems like a lot of it is tied to educating people. But on a practical level, I guess, any thoughts about what could that involve? Is it helping go to office to put out some kind of letter of support? What kind of like practical steps could it help?
I mean, all of the above. I mean, letters of support, engaging with staffers and explaining, again, demystifying, clarifying some of those false narratives and educating folks on why this is important. The last IP sub hearing we had on PERA, the boss led, you had patient groups and talking about why this is so important on the sort of the genomic side of the bill for diagnostic testing, bringing eligibility back for that. Just engagement is super important. And again, if in clarifying again the false narratives, educating folks, just bring people up to speed on what is patent law, what's the sort of the core components of it. Again, simply 102, 103, 101, 112, letting them know what these mean from a high level perspective. But at the end of the day, engagement, engagement is super important.
And I guess it's pretty noticeable in the last administration that the USPTO wasn't involved with kind of engaging on legislation. Did you get a sense like, were other staffers and offices saying like, where's the USPTO on this? Is that a kind of a thing that comes up on?
Not explicitly. No, I guess I can't think. I mean, I definitely thought that, like, I saw the value in having an agency or even the parent agency, DOC, get behind something.
Yeah.
No, surprisingly, it didn't come up, but I definitely saw, and that's why I say now's the time.
Yeah.
I definitely see the strength and the value, though, in having a sitting PTO director supportive of change, and then having, the parent agency, Department of Commerce, be supportive of something. That's really important, right, for sending a signal in our current Congress, current administration, that if we can get alignment, you definitely have more momentum or potentially stronger momentum to move things forward. Yeah. So it's a great time right now because, again, you're seeing what the PTO is doing. PTAB reform, aware that 101 is super important. That's sending clear signals of, look, this, there's a great letter of support, a statement for the record during the PERA hearing from the USPTO. These are, and as you saw, the letter of support coming from Congress, the NPRM, and just how, we need to do, they need to work together. And the stars are aligned more so than any time I've been on the Hill to see change. So
as I was reading the letter, it's pretty short, a letter of support, but it seems like there's a good relationship there. Yeah. So I think it kind of trends through it.
Yeah, the senator met with Director Squires before he was confirmed, and they've had great dialogues. I mean, again, what you see is what you get, I'd say, for both of them, and that's a compliment, meaning that they're very when you have folks that are genuine, regardless of what side of an argument you're going to take, that just puts you in a better position, right? Even if you agree to disagree, if you're genuine about why it lets things happen. In this case, it's great because there's agreement that both PTAB and 101 needs to be reformed. So we're in a great position. The problem is, with Congress and other issues and a new administration, slow to get back to bills, and we're back there now. So, and also finding vehicles to move things, it's challenging, but.
You mentioned AI, that when you were actually at the PAN office, you were actually working on some AI issues that maybe Senator Tillis was interested in. Obviously now that's like the hot topic, AI.
Yes.
And there's a lot of intersections with IP. There's lawsuits going on, pretty big ones on the copyright space. What are you hearing? What are the issues that you think are important from that perspective in kind of the intersection of AI and IP?
Yeah. So I mean, when it was at the patent office, this was, and we were dealing this back in, what was this, 2019. You had on the patent front Dabus and Thaler and sort of this idea of inventorship, ownership considerations. Could there be an AI? That was really interesting. We worked on a report that was published, and on the copyright side, there are considerations there. It's kind of flipped now. I think that it's been settled more on the patent side as natural person.
Yeah.
An AI can't be an inventor. What's interesting now, and that was really what was what we were dealing with at the PTO at the time. Although we were looking at both the copyright and patent side, what's the future hold? Fast forward to today, though, and yes, it's very much the patents more or less consideration has gone away, and it's the copyright consideration, fair use, ingestion. The amount of times I hear about AI bills, there's one point where like every other day there'd be an AI bill for consideration in the copyright front. But it is really important. The senator's approach has been a very clear and measured one, which is don't rush to legislate. Let the courts do their job. As you mentioned, there's a lot of cases being litigated. I think a few dozen actually, right? At one time it was 38. I can't keep, every day it changes. Cases fall out. But I think it's important to sort of see where the courts come out. And then as the boss has always taken a very scalpel versus a chainsaw, I say, approach to the AI copyright. Because a lot of folks, again, if you don't fully understand the area you're about to legislate, it can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. So I think his approach is, again, a very measured approach. Let's see where we need to go in.
So you mentioned the ingestion issue. I've been watching from a distance, but obviously there's some lawsuits going on between big media companies and the owners of these large language model companies about what content they can use to train their models. And at a distance, it seems both sides are arguing they have very strong arguments based on the current law. But are you hearing anything about a need for clarity from a legislative side at this point?
I mean, that started years ago. That was people would come in saying there needs to be legislation right now. And again, the boss's approach is sort of like, let's see what the courts, let the courts do their job and sort of see where things come out. And then if there's a need to legislate, so because I mean, he's very pro content creator, very pro inventors, right? I mean, property rights are super important, and you have to have strong property rights. So there was an initial call or initial narrative from both sides. One side is, oh my gosh, everything's being taken. And the other side is the argument they were saying, well, no, we can take everything.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, again, having been in this seat, it gives me the advantage to sort of step back and just see how the lay of the land has changed just in a few years. And it is interesting because the narrative has changed, where like maybe tech would come in and say, we can take whatever. Now the narrative is, okay, we're working on maybe an opt-out or maybe something akin to robots.txt. Or they've seen it, or look what happened with Disney and ChatGPT, OpenAI.
Yeah.
Right? They struck a deal.
Yeah.
So
that is interesting to see because one day and I'm not talking about them specifically, but sometimes these type of companies seem like enemies one day, and then next thing you know, they resolve all their issues without any legislation or.
And I'd say to some extent that's the way it should be. Let the industry, let the folks come to some sort, again, meeting the minds, right? And that's what I would say when we met with these folks very early on, was like, you probably want to resolve this yourselves, right? Versus, but very people legislate, because they think the legislation is going to be in their best interest,
right?
maybe not, right? Depending on how things, there's also, we talked about with bills and compromise and everyone taking a haircut. So if they can resolve it themselves, and I think that's what's happened. I think folks realize, okay, have that engagement with the opposite side and try to figure out how to minimize that delta and come to some sort of agreement that you both can live with. And we've seen that. Like, it's nice to see, because at the beginning, years ago, when they would come in screaming bloody murder, it's very interesting to see where things are now. Now, we still have to see what happens. I think ingestion's a huge issue. Everyone focuses on the model and the transformative use, the post-model output. I think there's a big issue with infringement right at the beginning, right, when you're just scraping the internet and ingestion. So that's a concern, to sort of see where the courts come down on that. But like you said, the some folks that maybe thought before, hey, everything's fair game, now we're seeing, okay, more agreements struck, more,
Yeah.
okay, maybe we can figure out licensing agreement. You know what I mean? Like that's the way it should be. Is like, let's not rush to legislate. So the senator's position is, not wait and see, but sort of observe what the courts are doing. And if there's a need to legislate, he will lead that charge because
on the legislative front, or maybe on the non-legislative front, are there any issues that's kind of you're thinking about beyond what we talked about today with PERA, PREVAIL, some of these?
I mean, those are the biggest on the patent front, although, quality also is a topic that I think is very important. Again, very near and dear to my heart, considering I was an examiner and a SPE, and again saw that. I think, and I sort of, you and I have talked about this chicken and the egg, right? There would be nothing to litigate if you didn't have a patent in the first place. So I think a lot of focus needs to be put on the foundation versus the house that's built on the foundation. A lot of folks work their way backwards. I think, again, if there's a crack in the foundation, fix that before you're going to try to fix the third story, right? Because you're just going to have a problem again in the house. So I think, looking at all things, eligibility reform, because that is an area that examiners spend an immense amount of time wrangling with during prosecution. I think quality is important, right? High quality, I think, will lead to less litigation, and there's always room for improvement. And Director Squires, my boss, wrote a letter about leveraging AI technology for efficiency gains to examination. I think that's super important because I know I spent a lion's share of my time doing prior art searches, and as one should. But sometimes you can be finding a needle in a haystack, and that haystack's infinitely growing, right, or exponentially growing. And so, PERA, PREVAIL, but again, quality. Again, you may not see, the problem is there's only so much time in the day to legislate and figure things out. So those are the two big leading things. Now, on the non-patent side, you have online commercial piracy, no-fault injunctions. The senator's been looking at that and leading the charge on that because he's been out front about piracy, and there's a whole bunch of things.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what's the no-fault injunction?
Yeah, I mean, basically this idea that, so the problem is domestically we have the ability to take down sites that have pirated movies that are streaming pirated movies. Internationally, it's a little bit more complicated, and so we're looking at a way to sort of reconcile what the rest of the world, most of the rest of the world does internationally to take down sites and bring the U.S. in alignment to that. And so it would allow content folks to take down sites that are streaming. And what's really interesting, and I didn't know this till I went to the Senate, is just, people think, oh, I'm just streaming a movie, what's the harm? Or, what I mean? What they don't realize is on these sites, and I get to see all these interesting demos, there's advertising. Okay, well, that's interesting. So they have advertising on the pirated site. I don't care, I'm getting pirated movies, someone may say. Well, where's the money going from that advertising? Lots of times I found it goes to some crazy things. I mean, you have issues with sex trafficking, criminal enterprises. I mean, it's not just pirating a movie. There's some serious ramifications to supporting these things. And so taking these sites down and limiting or mitigating the ability to pirate software and movies, it's super important. So that's one thing that the center is working on. And so we're working closely with the House on that. So hope to have bicameral, bipartisan support for that. And the other areas on the DMC, expeditious removal. There's some areas for live sporting events. We're looking at some ways. Expeditious removal is part of the law. It's just wasn't really well defined. And so, again, getting back to what I said before, a scalpel approach versus like a chainsaw approach, the center's looking at how to dial in and define expeditious removal a little bit more clearly to deal with live events, because a lot of the revenue and a lot of the gains is the live aspect of the event, right? Once it's not live anymore, there's not much value. So if you can't get that taken down in a timely manner.
You mentioned the USPTO. Obviously, one of the issues that they're focused on now is kind of dealing with the backlog in the last administration. I'm sure from your perspective, it's been interesting to watch both the problem coming into being and now trying to address it. I guess any thoughts about that? Either side.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm probably we will talk offline. I have a lot of thoughts on that. Having been at the PTO 20 plus years, it's a tough thing because you can't necessarily out hire the problem, and so I think what I will say is it's great what the current administration, the current leadership is doing there to look at efficiency gains too. A lot of folks super hyper focus on these things like they're the end all be all, where I don't think folks realize is you need to look at everything and improve everything a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And overall, you'll get a general, and it takes time.
Yeah.
You can't fix something overnight, right? So, you have to hire examiners, but you also have to train them and retain them. And that's a whole topic for another day. I mean, I did that for a period of time, training new examiners and hiring and firing, and it's in retaining them is a challenge. But then also, how do you get efficiency? You talk prior art search, needle in the haystack. Again, you have an exponentially growing pool of prior art, and a lot of it questionable, and we can get into that stuff some other time. But like the CCP, there's a lot of studies and reports on like bad white papers, there might be high quantity but not high quality of art out there, and how do you filter through that quickly, right? Because examiners are under production, and so leveraging tools to help them do that better and quicker is a win for the agency. It will help reduce that backlog. So I think they have the right approach. I think it's just you need to look at all aspects, not just one. And a lot of people hyper-focus just on one and say, oh, well, they're only doing this one. Really, they're approaching from a holistic approach.
Yeah. And I think you but you shared your approach when you were an examiner about kind of doing a thorough examination, pick up the phone and training your examiners when you're a supervisor to do that. And I think that's something that could be done in a broader way.
I mean, I will die on that hill. I can't tell you how. I mean, I compact prosecution I will die on this hill. It's a win-win. It's a win for the examiner. It's a win for the SPE. It's a win for the agency. It's a win for the party you're working on the outside, the attorney, the inventor. Yeah. Because if you can just get to disposal, ideally for them, they want an allowance, a patent, and you don't have to then continue to prosecute this case over years. You can move on to the next thing. It's a win-win. Yeah. So it's just putting in that effort up front. Yeah.
And to add to those wins, I think it's a win for quality. Obviously, everybody kind of talks about what a reasonable resolution is, and there's a back and forth. And
especially if you do via examiner's amendment, right? Meaning you're not just, and not to say you can't just grant a patent. You can't say something's allowable. Yeah. Initially, sometimes the claims can be drafted in such a way that there is no prior art. There are no 101 issues. There's no 112 issues. Okay, and there's no double. You can issue an allowance. Oftentimes, I found there were some issues, but again, is it worth writing an office action for that, dragging things out, protracted prosecution? Or I could pick up the phone, or I found a piece of prior art that maybe would serve as a basis for a 103, but I wasn't so sure about the subsequent art I need to add to really write a solid. Pick up the phone, say, this is the prior art I found. If you just amend the independent claim or bring this dependent claim in or change a couple words in the independent claim, right? I can issue it. That's great. I mean, again, and again, it's just getting that dialogue, and they may ask you, well, send me the prior art, or what are you talking? But again, you get on a telephone call, you can resolve so many issues.
So the USPTO is hiring examiners now. Mm-hmm. So there might be some young Peter-Anthonys who are joining the office, and they might be Googling around, come across this podcast, and they listen to this interview, and they're like, I want to follow that guy's path. What advice would you give them, like, within the patent office, and then kind of finding opportunities?
I guess what I'd say is the same thing I say. I talk to a lot of law school students. I get invited, or they come to visit me and sort of say, how did you find this path or stumble? I say how I stumbled into it. But it comes down to this. It's like, man, I think I've touched on it while we talked today, being genuine and like, just be good at what you do. Like if you're blessed and lucky to find something that is your passion, it's good to be ambitious and have goals, but you don't, I didn't predict any of this stuff. I had no idea. Like if you had told me I'd be doing work with the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Tillis, getting to work on 101 that I then prosecuted as an examiner, I'd say, get out of town. You're crazy. I literally never to make. So I just say, find that thing that drives you, that you do well, because it'll set you up for when that opportunity comes. Like, again, a lot of it comes down to luck and timing. Someone has to put, and it's a case in point for me, at least I'll say it this way, is people put certain opportunities in front of me. They put the door in front of me, right? That I couldn't manifest. There was no job application to apply for Judiciary. They called over. So they had to put that door there. I had to be able to step over that threshold and succeed, though, right? So you want to set yourself up the best way for something you may not even know. So if you can find something that drives you, that you're passionate about, and you're good at it, that will put you in that small percentile, so that when there's an opportunity, maybe they're going to come a calling to you, or you're going to see something, or you're going to be best suited or have the best likelihood to succeed in that role, if that makes sense.
Well, that's great wisdom, great moments. And
I'm a year older, so I don't know if I'm a year wiser, but
yeah. Well, you've seen it all. You've seen it from all angles, and we'll be following with interest. But Peter-Anthony, thank you so much for coming and closing.
Thank you, Eli.